Joseph. A whole chapter, the 12th chapter, entitled Joseph, is devoted to the life story of Joseph. There's a verse elsewhere too, but I don't remember the number of the verse. It gives a continuous account of the history of Joseph. The first 3 verses and the concluding section, both pointing to the purpose which underlies the story. It is not, in fact, a mere narrative, but a prophetical statement of the dealings of the prophet's enemies towards him and his dealings with them, that the plans of Joseph's brothers to get rid of him and his magnanimous treatment of them contained a prophecy relating to the murderous plans of the prophet's enemies and his flight to Medina and his ultimate triumph over them, and his generous treatment towards them is made clear by the following incident. The prophet is related to have taken hold of the 2 sides of the gate of the Kaaba on the day of the conquest of Mecca, and he said to the Quraysh, who had been guilty of the most cruel of crimes against him and his followers, "How do you think I should treat you?" They said, "We hope for good, a noble brother and the son of a noble brother." And then he said, "I say, as my brother Joseph said, no reproof be against you this day." The concluding words are the words of Joseph relating to Surah 12, 8, 92, and are not met with in the Bible. The prophet Joseph's story, as related in the Holy Quran, starts with this vision. I saw 11 stars, celestial bodies is the term, and the sun and the moon. I saw them making obeisance to me, says Surah 12, 8, 4. In the Bible narrative, Jacob rebukes Joseph on account of this dream, saying, "What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and my mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth?" Genesis 37:10. According to the Holy Quran, Jacob saw Joseph's future greatness in this vision and said, "And thus will thy Lord choose thee and teach thee the interpretation of sayings, events, and such too, and makes his favor complete to thee and to the children of Jacob." Surah 12, 8, 6. Later on, when he was cast into a pit by his brethren, Joseph, according to the Quran narrative, received a divine revelation. Surah 12, 8, 15 says, "Thou wilt certainly inform them of this affair of theirs, while they perceive not." It finds no place in the Bible narrative, and there is thus this essential difference between the 2 versions. The Bible narrates it as a simple story. The Quran gives prominence to the spiritual element, which alone can justify its record in a book meant for the spiritual guidance of mankind. The Quran narrates the fact which the Bible admits that Joseph received a divine revelation just at the time when his life had apparently come to an end, that he will one day be the master of his present oppressors. It is this circumstance in a prophet's life which enables him to face all distresses and difficulties, and deep conviction of the ultimate triumph of truth, which is produced by revelation from on high. The Bible narrative thus divests the story of its real beauty. When Joseph's brethren came to Jacob with false blood on his shirt, Jacob doubted their sincerity. He said, "Nay, your souls have made a matter light for you. So patience is goodly, and Allah is he whose help is sought against what you describe." Surah 12, 8, 18. Not so, according to the Bible. "And he knew and said, It is my son's coat, an evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces." Genesis 37, 33. The Bible represents Jacob as an ordinary mortal, while the Holy Quran represents him as a prophet. The former makes him grieve as an ordinary mortal for the loss of his beloved son, and Jacob rent his clothes and put on sackcloth upon his loins. Genesis 37, 34. The latter shows that he had, from the very first, a hope. Throughout the Quran narrative, Jacob's hope is the bright ray, without which the story, as in the Bible, is a gloomy narrative devoid of all spiritual value. But there are traces left still in the Bible narrative which show that the account as now met with in Genesis does not truly depict the character of Jacob. He rebukes Joseph for his dream, but at the same time observed the saying, Genesis 37:11, which shows that he was convinced of its truth. The Quranic narrative thus not only fits in with the prophetical character of Jacob, but also shows that wherever it contradicts the Bible, it removes, in fact, its inconsistencies. Both narratives relate Joseph's being sold into Egypt, his being kept in Potiphar's house, and the incident of Potiphar's wife. But here again, there's nothing to compare with the purity of the language of the Quran. Surah 12, ayat 23 says, And she in whose house he was sought to seduce him, and made fast the doors, and said, Come. He said, Allah forbid. Surely my Lord made good my abode. The wrongdoers never prosper. Compare this with the Bible narrative, Genesis 39, 7 through 12, in which the language used shows no trace of delicacy. Further, according to the Quran, Joseph's character was cleared of the false charge on the spot. Surah 12, ayat 26 through 29 says, A witness of her own family bore witness. If his shirt is rent in front, she speaks the truth, and he is one of the liars. And if his shirt is rent behind, she tells a lie, and he is one of the truthful. So, when he saw his shirt rent behind, he said, Surely it is a device of you women. Your device is indeed great. O Joseph, turn aside from this. And, O my wife, ask forgiveness for thy sin. Surely thou art one of the sinful. Now, one can't use the criteria brought up by the witness as a universal thing. Sometimes people attack people from the front. So, the vindication of Joseph's character on this occasion and the production of the evidence of the shirt are not related in the Bible, but without it, the episode of leaving the torn garment behind, which is narrated in the Bible too, becomes quite meaningless. It seems to be a clear omission. What follows this episode in the Quran narrative shows that Joseph was not cast into prison for being guilty of having committed an outrage on his master's wife, as against the Bible narrative. The Holy Quran does not allow even an accusation of this nature to stand against a prophet. In fact, the vindication of Joseph's character is given this importance to lay the stress on the purity of character of all prophets of God. It is also meant to be an evidence of our prophet's purity of character in his youth. The narrative then goes on to relate the incident of Joseph's being cast into prison on some other pretext. There, Joseph interprets the dreams of his two fellow prisoners, the king's butler and baker. There is, again, a difference here in the two narratives. Joseph, according to the Quranic narrative, is more anxious to reform the two fellow prisoners, which is not mentioned in the Bible at all. Surah 12, ayat 37 through 40 says, Surely I have forsaken the religion of a people who do not believe in Allah and are deniers of the hereafter, and I follow the religion of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. It beseems us not to associate aught with the law. This is by Allah's grace upon us and on mankind, but most people give not thanks. O my two fellow prisoners, are sundry lords better, or Allah the one the supreme? You serve not beside him, but names which you have named. Judgment is only Allah's. He has commanded that you serve none but him. This is the right religion, but most people know not. Joseph is at last set free and brought to the king to interpret his dream, but he refuses to leave the prison until he has innocence established beyond all doubt. The women bear evidence. We knew of no evil on his part, and Potiphar's wife admitted, as Surah 12, ayat 51 says, Now has the truth become manifest. I sought to seduce him, and he is surely of the truthful. The Bible narrative is again silent on this point. The king's dream is then interpreted, and Joseph is placed in authority over the treasures of the land, but the divine purpose is made clear. And thus did we give to Joseph power in the land. He had mastery in it, wherever he liked. We bestow our mercy on whom we please, and we waste not the reward of the doers of good, and certainly the reward of the hereafter is better for those who believe and guard against evil. Did I say that Surah 12, ayat 56 and 57. In vain one would search the Bible narrative for such spiritual lessons. Is it 1st or 2nd Timothy 3:16 that shows a measure for Scripture that doesn't pan out with the New or Old Testament? You remember those 4 points? Then follows an account of the famine during which Joseph's brethren come to Egypt for buying provision. Joseph recognizes them, but they do not recognize him. They are asked to come again with Benjamin. Jacob gives them some instructions, and the prophet in him is again brought to prominence. Surely he was possessed of knowledge, because we had given him knowledge, but most people know not. Surely to know not, Surah 12, ayat 68. The Bible narrative is devoid of these inspiring thoughts. Then follows the episode of the cup being placed in Benjamin's bag. According to the biblical narrative, Joseph himself commanded his steward to place it there. Genesis 44, verses 1 and 2 says, "And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, Put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and his corn money." I don't mean corn, the yellow thing. I mean corn as in kernels. Like wheat or something. And he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. According to the Quran narrative, Joseph did not give any such command, nor was it Joseph's cup, but the king's cup. Who placed it in the sack is not stated. It was either the steward or someone else, maybe one of Joseph's brethren, who did it by the way of mischief. Anyhow, Benjamin was kept in Egypt, and Joseph's brethren returned to their father and related to him the episode of the cup. Jacob blamed them in exactly the words in which he had blamed them when they had brought to him Joseph's shirt with false blood on it. Nay, your soul have contrived an affair for you, so patience is good. And that's a quote from Nay to is good, Surah 12, 83. This incident, however, only gave him a renewed hope of meeting Joseph. Surah 12, 83 says, Maybe Allah will bring them together to me. Surely he is the knowing, the wise. The remembrance of Joseph is brought tears to his eyes, and his sons blamed him for continuing to remember Joseph after so long a time had perished. The general impression that Jacob lost his eyesight on account of weeping too much finds no support in the Holy Quran. The words, which are strongly translated as meaning he lost his sight only, meant that tears came to his eyes. Surah 12, but Jacob's hopes grew greater still. Surah 12, ayat 86 and 87. He said, I complain of my grief and sorrow only to Allah, and I know from Allah what you know not. O my sons, go and inquire about Joseph and his brother, and despair not of Allah's mercy. Surely, none despairs of Allah's mercy except the disbelieving people. This shows that Joseph had a true prophet's faith in the divine promise given to him about Joseph. Jacob had a true prophet's faith. And he knew by divine revelation that Joseph was alive. These wonderful spiritual lessons are nowhere to be met with in the Bible narrative, while the Quran narrative is full of them. In fact, entirely changes the very nature of the dry Bible story of an old man losing a son and then finding him. In the Holy Quran, we have one spiritual lesson following another, giving comfort not only to Jacob, but also to the Holy Prophet and his faithful followers. It was due to this that their trust in God was as solid as a rock, so that under no circumstances did they give way to despair. The difference in the two narratives may be briefly summed up in the difference between secular and sacred history, between a record of the past events and great spiritual lessons for the future. The other aspect of Joseph's story has already been alluded to. In the story of Joseph is related to the story of the Prophet Muhammad himself, such as the beginning. We see Surah 12:7 saying, Certainly in Joseph and his brethren there are signs for inquirers. Such also is their end after being raised to the highest dignity in the land. Joseph prays to God thus. Surah 12:101 says, My Lord, thou hast given me of the kingdom and taught me of the interpretation of sayings. Well, events is included hadith, but originator of the heavens and the earth, thou art my friend in this world and in the hereafter. Make me die in submission and join me with the righteous. And then follow the remarkable words of Surah 12, 802. This is of the announcements relating to the unseen. I said 102, right? This is of the announcements relating to the unseen we revealed to thee. And thou wast not with them when they resolved upon their affair, and they were devising plans. These were clearly the plans which the prophet's enemies were now devising to put an end to his life, but he was told that their plans would fail, and they would at last come to him as Joseph's brethren came to Joseph, asking pardon for their cruelty to him and meeting with a magnanimous response, of which history does not afford another instance. Surah 12:92 says, no reproof be against you this day. Allah may forgive you, and He is the most merciful of those who show mercy.